Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the previous episode with Bennett Yellen, the writer, one of the writers of Dumb and Dumber. Hopefully that writer's strike is over at some point, man. But I'm back today with a brand new guest. Definitely excited to talk about him. He's a musician. Want to welcome to the podcast for the very first time, Mr. Jeffrey Bryan. How you doing, Jeffrey?
Hey, Fabian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I really, I want to pick your brain, man, because I heard some things about you and I read some things about you. Yeah, and they're good things, right? They're really good things. First and foremost, I love talking to musicians. I love music. I played a lot back in the day, and it was something that I never got to turn into a career. So when I see people, who have been able to leverage their talents and everything, and are living their passion essentially, I'm really excited to talk to people like you. So yeah, man. One thing I want to jump right in there and ask about, before we even get into the music, you were in Karate Kid.
Oh yeah, that little movie.
Right.
Yeah, I was in Karate Kid, 1984. What
was the name of your character?
I was Billy.
I
didn't have a last name.
Okay. And
there were a bunch of us like that. We called ourselves Freddy's Gang. Do you remember Freddy?
Yeah, Freddie was the neighbor, the one that invited Daniel to the beach and everything.
Well, he had a whole bunch of his own friends. And believe it or not, there were some famous guys. There was Frankie Avalon Jr. Was one of them. I think his name was Chucky. And Tim Daly. And then there was Tom Fridley. Tom was John Travolta's nephew. There was just a bunch of us that got hired and didn't work a lot. I guess they didn't need all the extra scenes that they had planned, but yeah, I'm in there all the way. I'm even in Cobra Kai. I mean, there's a few flashback from the original, and so I'm in those. That's really cool. Yeah. You were so you're one of Freddie's friends. Were you the one that said like, "Hey, cool friend, Freddie," right? Yeah.
You really know how to pick them.
Yeah. I'm one of those. Like I'm one of those crappy friends that as soon as he got his ass kicked the first time, we kind of bolted.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty cool, man. How old were you when you were in the film?
Probably 17. Yeah, I was really young. Everybody was. We were all out of high school.
Well, except Daniel LaRusso, right?
Yeah, well, Daniel was a couple years older than us. I think he was like the oldest one in the cast.
Yeah, and that's weird because he looked like the youngest one,
Yeah. But he just came off of doing Outsiders at that point. And he was still kind of unknown for the first one. And Elizabeth Shue was in the movie,
right? Who
became a well-known actress. Pat Morita, of course. So, I mean, there were a lot of people, but nobody expected that movie to do anything. It was just a little movie.
Well, I mean, we saw where that went, right? And it's still going strong.
Nobody would have thought that. Yeah.
Now, that kind of, for me, it makes me think like, so you're an entertainer through and through, man. It's at some point you decided like, hey, that's, what I like. I like to do, I want to do something in the arts, right? I mean, did you want to be an actor? Or you always want to be a musician? You want to do both?
No. Acting was never part of the plan, nor was it something I wanted to pursue. I'm not an actor. I never wanted to be. I just, I was performing in a show called Too Short for Primetime Players at the Roxy. And I was like, I don't know, 16 or something. And, they were producing a show for kids on Saturdays. It was a matinee. And they were, so we put on these shows and it was just like musical, whatever kids. I was the oldest one, believe it or not. And they had all these kids doing, tap dance or they get up and do a scene or sing a song. And I wrote songs and performed in that show, and it became kind of popular. And we went on some talk shows. And from there, all the people that were in that show became like, not all of them, but many of them went on to be, people you would recognize on TV. They were young. And so there were a lot of actors in that little group. And because of that, I was surrounded by people that were like, hey, you should get an agent. And so an agent approached me, and, I sent me out on films and stuff. And so I got into Karate Kid, but I really wasn't an actor. I had no experience. I was a musician. I've been a musician. That's all I've been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I was doing too.
Mm-hmm. When did the music bug bite you, man? When did you start playing?
Oh, probably 11 or 12. I mean, I was listening to music a lot when I was younger. I got a late start. 11 or 12 is late for some people I know. But I started singing. That's where I wasn't playing an instrument at that time. I was just trying to sound like the guys I was hearing on the records.
Right.
And it was just fun, something fun to do. And that just snowballed. Pretty soon what happened is I wanted to write the songs. So that took some training. I had to learn music. I had to learn how to understand what music was. And then I picked up the guitar, picked up keyboards. But all of it was to support my singing at that time.
Right. Okay. Now, when you mentioned the Roxy and whatnot, are you a Hollywood guy? You're an LA guy?
I was born. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
In California, in LA. But yeah, I mean, Hollywood, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, those are all my areas, Yeah.
And you grew up right in like the 80s as a musician, as a youngster, as a kid.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine, man, at that point, the whiskey, the Roxy, all of that, right? Just being on fire, right? I mean,
well, unfortunately, I would say unfortunately, because not really unfortunate, but at the time that I was old enough to actually to go to those places, it started to wind down. I mean, the Sunset Strip and the hair bands and all that, Guns N' Roses and Van Halen and all that stuff had already sort of, it kind of peaked, and I was too young to experience the Sunset Strip in the way that's been, popularized, but it was, remnants of it were still there. Of course, I played in all the famous venues, from, the Viper Room, which was originally called the El Centro. And then the Viper Room, and then Roxy and Gazzari's, which, became a million other things later on. Madame Wong's, all the famous places that the 70s and early 80s made famous.
Yeah, man. Because you mentioned it kind of just like at some point just maybe kind of fizzled out, right? I mean, I actually, I had a little band and everything. We played like the Whiskey and the Roxy in like 2004, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Everybody was talking so much about this. Like, at that point, it was like, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, LA's not what it was back in those days, and like I said, I was too young, way too young to experience that. But as in my teens, there were still remnants. I mean, those venues still existed, so we played them, but they're like you experienced. They weren't the same.
Yeah, and so it was like at that point it was already like, kind of almost like a pay to play type of thing. It's like,
yeah, LA's always been, it changed after, I would say after like 1980, everything started to get weird.
Yeah. And that to me was like what's kind of it just almost discouraged me, right? It's like, hey, I don't have money, right? And we're here trying to sell tickets, and like if we don't sell these tickets, we got to eat the costs. I'm like, it's tough, because like at that point when you're young and you're like, man, I have this dream, I want to become a musician. To me, it was very discouraging, So I'm like, nah, I need to make money. I can't be doing this. So I wanted to ask you, like, how did you get past that and really start to like turn it into a career? Because a lot of people have a dream, but it stays a dream.
Well, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's, I don't know how to answer that directly. I mean, the thing is that, you don't, I mean, roadblocks, and there are many, in life, in anything you choose, they're merely roadblocks. You've got to find your way around them. If you're truly passionate about it and you want to keep going, you find other ways to make money, which I know many musicians, including myself through the years, have found other ways to earn a living while they're continuing their passions. Some people, that's too discouraging and they move on, which is completely okay. And other people, figure it out. Sometimes you don't make much money, but I mean, if you're doing it just for the money, then you're probably in it for the wrong reasons anyway.
Now, what was like your first kind of like, I don't want to call it like, everybody's like, oh, what's your first break? But what was like the moment where you realized, okay, cool, this is starting to become like something I can do, for a living?
Well, you got to understand, there really wasn't a particular incident, because since high school, I was working, I was in films and I had bands, I had my own bands. And so, I mean, I was always moving forward, or thinking I was, I was always, I was working on my own project, or I'd join another person's project, or, there was always gigs and shows and songs to write. So it just sort of was an escalation through the years. I did get a publishing deal with A&M Records. At the time, their publishing company was called Almo Irving, which was a famous company. I think it was bought by Rondor, and Rondor is still a big publisher now. But so that was sort of an indication I was on the right track. I was a staff writer for A&M for a short period.
Nice. All right. Now, I want to flash forward a little bit, right? Because one of the things that I found interesting was that you play in Survivor.
Yeah, the band Survivor. Yeah.
Yeah. You play keyboard for Survivor and do vocals, backup vocals.
Yeah, I'm their musical director and I play keyboards for them.
Very nice. Yeah. Now, I wanted to bring this up because I've always had this weird misconception about Survivor, and I think a lot of people do.
Okay.
Right? I don't know where it came from. All right, but I always thought, and I know a few people who have the same thought, that Frank Stallone was in the band Survivor, that he was like the singer or something like that. I don't know where that came from, but like I
don't either. I've never heard that one.
Yeah, I even Googled it last night. Like, why do I think Frank Stallone was in Survivor? And a lot of people.
First of all, the guitar player who wrote "Eye of the Tiger" and all that stuff, his name's Frankie Sullivan. Maybe you're confusing him with Frankie Sullivan. But it turns out that Frank and Frank are best friends, and they are to this day, due to the Sly connection,
right?
Stallone. So, I don't know why I can't speak to why you think that, but they do have a close relationship. I
see.
Yeah, but he has nothing to do with the band.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't want to like assume that and be an act he was in
the two singers for Survivor are very famous. There's Dave Bickler and there's Jimmy Jamison, and Jimmy passed away in 2014, but he's kind of like a legend. He's amazing. So nobody would really confuse him for Frank Stallone.
It's so weird. I think it's just people that like grew up like, when I grew up, they probably just heard it somewhere. I don't know, man, but a lot of people like, my brothers thought the same thing. Like I said, I Googled it and a lot of people like on Reddit had the same like thought, like that Frank Stallone was like the.
Yeah. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
That's a new one for me. I haven't heard that.
Well, hey, you learn something. I guess you learn something new every day. And I learned Frank Stallone was not a part of Survivor.
No.
But with the band Survivor, man, that they they're known for Eye of the Tiger and whatnot, and that's a huge song, man. That's like everybody.
It's not a song. It's like it's beyond a song at this point.
Yes.
It's a meme. It's a, it's a cultural, historical entity unto itself. It's unbelievable how big, how there's very few songs ever written in the entire history of human writing that have reached that kind of, level of notoriety,
Yeah, I mean, we used to play it during wrestling practice in high school. That the whole Rocky soundtrack.
I believe it was licensed to the NFL.
Oh wow.
For the official NFL song. I mean, it recently got in the 1 billion stream club in Spotify. Wow. Billion streams.
Incredible.
It's crazy that song, but I mean, they aren't known for just that song. They've got a ton of hits, but that song is definitely defining. Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to ask about, because like the songs that were huge in the Rocky movies, Eye of the Tiger and Burning Hearts, it's like, people must want to like
Rocky 3 Rocky 3 and Rocky 4. Yeah.
They must really pop when they hear those songs played live, right? Obviously, there's other songs and,
well, you probably don't know this because you didn't know that Frank wasn't in the band. Frank's still on, but you probably don't know this is that Survivor had the theme song to Karate Kid.
What?
Moment of Truth.
Huh.
You don't remember that song? It's the moment of truth.
Oh, yeah.
That's Survivor.
Huh.
They had the theme song to that movie too.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know.
I mean, such catchy songs, like they work like they make, like I said, they make you kind of like feel something, right? They kind of pump you up.
Yeah, that was I guess that was sort of their style. They had these ability to write these crazy anthems, but beautiful ballads, man. They've got songs that are, it's an incredible catalog. Yeah. And there's a lot of songs that people don't know that are on the B-sides of these records that you're like, whoa, holy crap.
And that's what I wanted to pick your brain about, because like I said, there's a couple of songs there that everybody knows those Survivor songs, right? But what are some of maybe your favorite, Survivor songs that if people haven't heard this song, like you got to go listen to that right now?
Well, I mean, I'm going to sound, like a fan a little bit because I mean, some of those hits are some of the most amazing hits. I mean, Can't Hold Back is still an amazing song with all its modulations. The Search Is Over is another, just from a songwriting point of view, it's hook after hook after hook. And you're just being punched constantly with these amazing hooks, So, I got to go with some of the hits, but there's other songs that they have too that are Desperate Dreams is a beautiful song. There's God, there's so many. Too Hot to Sleep. That whole album is awesome. I mean, there's just so many great songs that people just don't know the songs. But they have like 5 or 10 really well-known hits.
Yeah.
That we play, of course. But some of the deeper cuts, only the real hardcore fans would know. They're from the Chicago area, so the Midwest, they go nuts for anything. Very cool. But you get further out to the coasts, and the hits are what people most familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Now what are y'all up to in Survivor right now? Are you like writing music? Are you doing any sort of touring? What's going on with that?
Well, there are some shows. COVID killed everything.
Right.
And it's taken a long time for some of the bigger the acts, sometimes the harder it is to get them back up and running. And in our case, we have some shows scheduled for the end of the year. There's some talk about doing something here in Vegas, which I can't really say too much about, but they're still active. There's still stuff going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's just taken longer than I wanted it to.
For sure. Yeah, man, I can't believe how badly, the music industry was hit, by COVID. Like there was nothing happening, I mean,
well, it wasn't hit. It was destroyed.
Yeah.
literally destroyed. I mean, people's careers were over. And I don't mean just music careers. I'm talking about promoters and ticket buyers and brokers and you know, I mean, you when you tell people they can't gather, I mean, you just shut down every venue in town in the world. So that industry, aside from the streaming side of things, the live music industry was over.
Yeah.
There was no way to have it, you know, and Zoom didn't work out too well.
Right.
Nobody really liked that. I did it a few times and, you know, it's so sterile. It's not the point, you know, it's good for certain things, but it, you know, as a way forward, it was not going to catch on, you know?
Right. You mean like doing concerts on Zoom?
Yeah. It just doesn't work. You know, I mean, in theory, it sounds like it should. And when you go and do it, there's just not enough, there's not enough interaction between the audience and you. And it's very sterile and it doesn't feel real. And so it didn't really pick up much traction. It's a good thing that COVID ended because, you know, the music business was pretty much done.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, we see some bounce back and, you know, people start having these big, I mean, I think it's starting to kind of sort of.
Yeah, it's more or less coming back. I mean, you know, obviously there's nobody hesitating that wants to go out to book a show. And people are now going to shows and they're not masking and everything. But but it's not like everybody was jumping in the water that quick. There's a lot of people that have been, you know, you have to understand when you're in a, you know, national act, you know, you've got support crew and not all of them live in the same area. So, you know, coordinating their tickets and hotel rooms and the different rules that the venues had for so long about what you can and can't do because of COVID, et cetera. It's taken a long time to kind of get back to normal, so to speak. And it's really not quite there yet, but it's better than it gets better every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we start seeing Taylor Swift fans in the audience wearing diapers so they can pee themselves during the concert. So it's getting somewhere back. I mean, it's a little weird now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, people are determining for themselves what their risk level comfort is.
Right.
But as far as selling tickets and doing big shows and stuff, that's starting to happen now.
Yeah. You think anybody will be wearing a diaper to a Survivor concert?
Not because they wanted to be.
So they don't. Oh, there you go. Maybe the involuntary, right?
I mean, maybe some of their fans are now in diapers. I don't know.
Right. I just thought that was silly. I'm like, man, people wearing diapers so they pee themselves so they don't miss a song. All right.
That's pretty weird. Like those NASA pants.
Oh yeah, something like that.
You know, where you can basically just kind of let it ride, so to speak.
Hey, there's a new business idea right there, right?
Yeah. Well, NASA has them. Apparently, you put them on and they take care of themselves, so to speak.
Oh, that's out to the public.
No, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure there's somebody that could buy them, but I was just making a joke. But they have those. You know, the astronauts they shit in these diapers that they don't have to change. It's kind of gross. Okay.
Hey, they can take it to a Taylor Swift concert. There we go.
That's what I'm saying.
But you know, I wanted to ask too about, you know, I looked you up and everything, and you had like the K-Tel All-Stars. Tell me about that.
K-Tel All-Stars.
Yeah, there we go.
Do you see that straight or is it backwards?
I see it straight.
Okay, so I must have it flipped. Okay, cool. The K-Tel All-Stars is sort of a labor of love project that I do. And it's a really great band. We focus on 1970 to 1979 songs, one-hit wonders and top 10 hits that have appeared on K-Tel records. And for the younger generations that don't know what K-Tel is, because I was even too young to even remember K-Tel at some point, they were sort of like Spotify is with playlists, but on vinyl. So they used to make choppers and dicers and kitchen gadgets and they got into, and they were doing the infomercials. They were the king of the infomercials, Ginsu knives and the Vegematic 3000 or whatever they had. Anyway, the point is they got into the music business and they started chopping up songs and they put them on compilation records. And that's how, when you were 10 years old, if someone bought you a K-Tel record, they thought you were doing you a favor, because it had, a Kiss song, and then it would have Neil Diamond or Olivia Newton-John, Captain Tennille, Boston, all on the same record. So it was kind of like you were subjected to a whole bunch of different artists that you wouldn't have normally even knew existed. And so we wanted to pay homage to that. And that's what the K-Tel All-Stars was born to do that.
I see. Okay. So K-Tel was kind of like, when I grew up, it was like, now this is what I call music, volume 1. Now this is what I call music, volume 2. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the compilations. Yeah. But they were famous back in the 70s. And honestly, it's not so much that we care about K-Tel so much. It's that we care about the 70s, that era. And when we think about music of that era, the K-Tel brand that they created is so ingrained in that whole pop culture of the 70s that, like maybe 30 years from now, people will be talking about Spotify as being, maybe there'll be something else by then. But back then it was K-Tel, and it was so, it was everywhere. You couldn't get away from them on the TV, on ads in the record stores and Kmart. It was everywhere. They were the biggest distributor of records at one time. So, it just came synonymous with, well, what's the most obvious thing that music was connected on? It was K-Tel,
Cool. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, what kind of music do you all play with the K-Tel All-Stars? Is it like a mix, you mentioned, it's one hit wonders?
Well, it's like a K-Tel record. So, if it's from 1970 to 1979, if it was in the top 10 and a one hit wonder, or, doesn't have to be a one hit wonder, but usually those were in the top 10, right, we'll play it. So we'll play Boston, we'll play Kansas, we'll play Partridge Family, Three Dog Night. Whatever was popular during those years,
some of the disco funk stuff like that.
No,
too?
We don't play too much disco. It's more AM rock.
Okay.
We do play a few things that are disco-ish, like Love Will Keep Us Together, Captain Tennille, and Dancing Queen. We'll do them.
Okay.
We do a Pablo Cruz tune, which is What You Gonna Do, which is kind of a disco beat back then. But most of the stuff is AM, tried to stay on the AM radio kind of vibe. So not to be confused with whatever people are calling yacht rock. That's nothing like this.
I've never heard that phrase.
Seriously?
Yeah, I never heard it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's move on then.
What is yacht rock, man?
Look it up.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah, you should look it up. I mean, most of those songs are in the early 80s. So we don't really focus on anything in the 1980s, but you'll get it.
Let's see here. We got
it's a very,
oh man. Okay, I see. Yeah. When I see like Michael McDonald on there, I keep forgetting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
that's like yacht rock.
Yeah, that would be I guess they would consider that yacht rock, whatever that is. Yeah. I mean, yacht rock's just a made up term. It doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
And the songs that fall into whatever category that is meant by that is still somewhat subjective. But the way I determine it is that a lot of those songs were early 80s, late 70s. They were more on FM radio. They had sort of a smooth kind of production to them. Kenny Loggins and, Christopher Cross. And
I've heard a lot of that referred to as like blue-eyed soul.
No, not at all. Oh. Blue-eyed soul that's like Daryl Hall, John Oates. That's Philly from Philadelphia. And blue-eyed soul is basically white guys doing black music.
Yeah, I guess the two kind of get like jumbled every now and then, though.
But you're confusing two different genres. Blue-eyed soul is a real thing, and it's something people still do. I mean, and there's many acts that have sort of an R&B vibe to them But but they're not necessarily, growing up in the hood or something. They're you know what I mean? They're just white guys, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but that's basically what Blue-Eyed Soul is, It's a nice way of saying, guys that sound very funky, but they're not from that group, I guess. I don't know. And it's like a genre. And with yacht rock is just an arbitrary title of songs that somebody decided sound smooth to them, and they stuck them in that category. So, Hall & Oates has songs that you would consider yacht rock, like maybe Man Eater, Dream, What You Want.
I love that song.
That's yacht rock,
Okay. Hey, and there you go. See, learn.
But they happen to be a Blue-Eyed Soul band that has nothing to do with yacht rock.
I think that's where the confusion is too. Like I said, like sometimes I think people jumble it together because, like I said, Michael McDonald too. Like if you take, I keep forgetting. I mean,
he's got a Blue-Eyed Soul kind of vibe to him too. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. It's all music to me, man.
But me too. I think though that when you say Blue-Eyed Soul, I think that's literally referring to Philadelphia.
Okay.
There was a time in Philadelphia where there was a Philly sound, and it was called, Blue-Eyed Soul. And I think Daryl Hall and John Oates, they embraced that. So
what's funny, because in my Spotify playlist, I just have that kind of music listed as funky white boys.
Yeah. I mean, not all of it has to be funky. It can sound like, Al Green or something,
Right.
It can be very sexy and smooth, too. And that's also part of that whole R&B soul kind of thing.
And so what are y'all up to now with the K-Tel All-Stars? What's going on?
Well, we have a big show on Thursday. I don't know when you're going to air this, but on Thursday.
I'll put it out tonight, yeah.
Oh, cool. July 6th. It's at a place called Notoriety Live on Fremont Street in Las Vegas. You're in LA. I don't know where all your listeners typically live, but if they happen to be in Vegas during 4th of July and they stay a few extra days, come see us. It's not a lot of money. We're only charging $20 to see a Vegas show. Sorry. And it's a place called Notoriety Live. So you go to notorietylive.com and go to the calendar and look at K-Tel, and you can buy tickets. Yeah.
I got a friend listening all the time in Vegas. Roy, I know you're listening, man. Go watch the K-Tel All-Stars in Vegas at Notoriety Live.
Is he in Vegas? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he lives in Vegas. So
well, hopefully he'll if he shows up, I'll make a shout out to you. Because he's the only one I assume would know who Fabian Ojeda is.
Yeah, I worked with him before, so
yeah.
So I know he's listening, and I know he likes to go do like cool stuff like that. So Roy, go watch Jeffrey play.
Yeah, right? It's a fun band. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of we play the songs exactly the way you think you would want. Exactly the way you think that you should have heard it in the 70s. Okay. So we're not creating something. We're not using tracks. We're not doing anything that they didn't have in the 70s. So that way, when you walk in, you're like immediately in a time capsule. It's like, this is how the band may have sound in the early 70s. And that's important to us. And that's why I think that's what makes this show kind of special.
And that's what it is, man. I think sometimes, this is just my opinion, but I think, you start getting into like the looping machines and all, and it's cool technology. Listen.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah. But there's a place for it.
Right. I've never been a fan of like pressing play and listening to that live. I can't get into like DJs and things like that myself. Right.
Yeah.
If I'm going to a concert, I want to see, a band play, right? I don't want to hear somebody press play. I think there's a lot of people like that out there. And so I really think,
well, I think backing tracks are a necessary evil when a certain records need to be reproduced in live in such a way because their fans expect a certain thing. Maybe that there's an argument for that there, but generally speaking, I want to see people play live. you know, and I think it's swinging the other way. I think people, you know, technology is great, and the ability to use the new technology to write songs and do other things with it is another evolution of music, and that's all. I'm all for it, but you know, I prefer to see a guy actually playing and singing and doing the stuff. If I'm paying money for a ticket, you know?
Right? You want a unique experience. You don't want
exactly
experience in your living room at home and put headphones on. Yeah,
that was the beauty about the 70s too, is that because the technology, we didn't have that technology then. Bands would get up and play, and they didn't always sound like their records, but people were okay with that because they knew that their records was a product and their live show was a different product. And that was okay. You didn't have to necessarily sound identical to your record. Now, the closer you could sound to your record, that might be impressive, but it wasn't sort of expected. And now it's a little bit more expected. So there's pressure from the audience because they're more sophisticated and than they were back then. And there's also, you know, pressure to sell records, and they want to sound just like what people are hearing on Spotify. So, you know, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but yeah, I prefer, you know, I'm a musician. I prefer to do the work.
Right. No, you're right. Sometimes it does go the other way, man. Because I've heard bands before, like on you know, on the record, there it's a little overproduced and everything, but you're like, oh, I like that song, right? And you go see them live, and you're like, what the hell was that? That sounded incomplete, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a fine line. It depends on who it is, and how they reproduce their records. You know, if they're a 3-piece band and all their stuff is, you know, tracks and tracks of keyboards and strings and other stuff and samples. Yeah, you're going to be disappointed if you go out and see a trio that doesn't have all the extra stuff that makes the record special. So there's definitely a fine line, you know, and every act has to figure out where what I'm against are these tribute acts or these cover bands, like these yacht rock bands that go out and they claim that they're playing they're playing them like the original songs, and they got tracks. I'm like, well, that's karaoke, man. You know. So that's what I'm actually against.
Okay. Yeah, give them the real true experience.
Either play it or get off the stage. I'm not talking about the original artists. That's, like I said, they have a fine line to walk. You know, if you produced a song that became a hit and you're a trio, but it had a whole bunch of other players on it, people are going to want to hear it the way, and so you have to make that decision, and how, you know, you have to kind of decide how much do I want to bring with me, you know, and there's some legitimacy to that argument. I'm just talking about people flat out using tracks because they can't play. You know? Yeah, no, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, for sure. You know, so Jeffrey, what else do you have going on, man? I know you as a musician, you know, you have your hand in multiple things, right? You have your own music, just like your own projects going on, other things you want to share? Well, it may sound a little, you know, anticlimactic, but I mean, honestly, right now, K-Tel is what I'm focusing on. We're, you know, like I said, we got this big show on Thursday. We're trying to work on a residency here in Vegas. So, you know, right now all my promotions going into that. I'm going to be stepping into Survivor rehearsals in a couple months. So I haven't really wrapped my head around that yet. So right now it's all I'm all K-Tel. I even wore the shirt. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's all K-Tel right now. So I don't have a ton of additional projects that I'm being pulled on. Well, I mean, still, that sounds like a lot to me, you know? It is. There's a lot. I mean, I still write, you know, material. I still have songs that I have music on a lot of TV shows and cable stuff. And so I'm always writing for the library and things like that. But you just caught me at a time where I'm like, you know, got my nose right in K-Tel. So cool. Yeah. And so where can people find you? Where can they listen to you, find you on social media, anything like that? My website is Jeffrey Bryan Music. It's JEFFREYBRYAN and then wordmusic.com. And I've got all my, you know, links there and everything, but, you know, I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And then the K-Tel All-Stars is the K-Tel All-Stars, or the totally70show.com. Okay. Either one.
All right. Well, I mean, I hope that show goes well for you, man.
Me too, man. Thank you.
I really do like, 70s music. I know I'm a 90s kid. I grew up in the 90s, but
Well, have you ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was like I have a playlist just like that.
That's pretty much our set list.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we didn't plan it that way, but yeah, they've sort of dusted off these songs, and people are like, "Holy crap, these are amazing!"
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice to kind of go back in time a little bit,
Please tell me you play "Come and Get Your Love."
Redbone. That's a very popular one. Yes, we do it.
Yes, nice, good. I love that song, man. That it's real interesting because whatever. I mean, I know people would like get a little funny about race or whatever. I thought that was a bunch of black guys. They were a bunch of natives.
Yeah, it's they were one of the very few Native American rock bands, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And they were, that was unfortunately that's all they were popular for.
Mm.
I don't even think they had a second hit.
Mm-hmm.
Here, let me see if I can find you something. Yeah. Where would that be? Sorry, hold on.
No problem. Yeah, when I first when I first heard that song, I thought it was like I said a group of black dudes, and I find a video and they're all in there.
Well, I mean, everyone thought Elvis was black too.
Uh-huh.
And it's just I can't find Redbone at the moment, but there is this. Let's see here. I'll do this for you.
70s.
Can you hear that?
Valley,
yeah.
And the Four Seasons. Jeffrey.
This is something live we did.
Yeah, that's cool.
This was in Murrieta last week. There were 10,000 people there.
Dang. That's pretty cool.
You get the idea.
So it's like just like you said, right? It's all organic, right? Like no backing tracks. Like
no, it's a real band doing real music.
Mm-hmm.
And was only 5 of us. We all sing, and it's really organic, and people dig it. We were playing Murrieta, the city of Murrieta in California.
Oh.
Yeah, San Bernardino, Riverside. They did a birthday bash for the city, and we did the party, and they had 10,000 people and fireworks, and so we're used to big crowds and things like that. So
yeah, very cool, man. Well, I hope to see some more cool stuff from you down the line, man. But everything you shared today, I was like, man, that sounds cool.
Thank you, man.
I'm gonna check out some more Survivor and everything too, just so I can hear some more of those deep cuts that you were talking about. But yeah, man, I wish you nothing but success, and hopefully I'll have a really good show in this upcoming week. But thank you again for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening at home, I appreciate you. Thank you. Fuck you and good night. Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast, and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.